I have identified 5 stages of awakening. I feel that it is incredibly important for you to know this process so as to make the most of each stage and get through them as quick as possible. This entire project is centered on this process, and I have taken great care to put the information in the order that I wish I had learned it. I feel this will allow the individual to deal with a new reality in a safe environment that also ensures a successful awakening. The awakening process mirrors Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, which many of you might be familiar with. The reason why they mirror is because it is literally your old self dying, so that a totally free, new self can be born. Your body will physically and mentally react as if there was a real death in your life. We identify ourselves by what we do, what we wear, and what we drive. When you are awake, none of that will matter. You will transcend the current consumer order and be fully prepared to deal with a new paradigm. I feel it is incredibly helpful for you to understand this process, to not only identify where you are, but where you should be going. I cannot stress to you how important and necessary this process is. If you do not start thinking for yourself, you will be without the skills necessary to survive a post-dollar world. The first stage in the 5 stages of awakening is denial. In this stage, you will dismiss anything that goes counter to conventional wisdom as crazy talk or conspiracy theory. This is really a self-defense mechanism the brain uses to protect the ego. No one likes to admit when they're wrong, much less admit that they have been fooled. So it is infinitely easier to deny a truth rather than it is to embrace it. It is easier to mock than debate. It is easier to hide under the sheets and pretend that there is not a monster in the room. This is where most of our society is stuck right now. They believe that whatever the authorities tell them is the truth. They go along with the crowd in fear of being looked upon as strange or crazy. In my experience, denial comes in 2 forms. First is the most common and least dangerous form of denial. It is just not wanting to know the truth that might upset their happy little life. This innocent denial of ignorance is bliss mentality is held by so many Americans who think that things are going swell for them, so why ruin it with the truth? There was a woman I was working with that literally shut down on me when confronted with the truth. She literally said to me, "I do not want to know because that reality is too scary for me." This form of denial is the easiest to overcome because when things go wrong in their perfect little world, they will have no more excuses to not look for the reason why their world fell apart. There is no more bliss for them to remain ignorant. The economic depression and the political failures of both the Bush and the Obama administration have already shook a great many out of this denial. As long as people believe in absurdities, they will continue to commit atrocities. Voltaire. The second kind of denial is one that is much more pernicious. I view it as guilty denial. This is the denial of people who are actually benefiting off of the illusion of our paradigm. This comes from business owners, government employees, and others whose livelihood is derived off of the current debt paradigm. These people actively fight against the truth through disinformation or saying they just can't keep it a secret or that's just crazy conspiracy talk. They would rather create a plausible deniability to distance themselves from the reality of their actions or inactions. Their aggressive defense of the illusion shows me that they know what they are doing is wrong. They are too afraid to live outside of this paradigm, so it is better to try to hold it together despite its human costs. Anger is just a cowardly extension of sadness. It is a lot easier to be angry at somebody than it is to tell them that you're hurt. Thomas Gates. The second stage of the awakening is anger. When you start to see that you were fooled, you react violently for being taken for a fool and you want to lash out. This action is ineffectual in bringing about positive change for the freedom movement. In my experience, those that propose violence are probably working for the government just trying to find some sucker to frame.
You're a fucking cop, the 3 of you! Go on, it's our line! It's a peaceful demonstration!
Anger is a very natural reaction and is one that you must go through rather than suppress. Finding out how the world really works is akin to finding out your significant other has been cheating on you. You may have remained faithful to what this country was about while atrocities were committed behind your back. Anger is just covering up the fact that you are really hurt for being taken advantage of. This stage is often the shortest, but it is also the one with the most energy is expended. In my anger stage, I redirected my anger to fuel an intense amount of research into making sure that I was never fooled again. It eventually led to the creation of this project. The third stage of the awakening is called bargaining. After you calm down, you start to reach out to anybody who will listen to tell them what is really going on. This is the most annoying stage of the awakening process. And remember that you are reaching for people who are still in the stage 1 of denial. You end up ruining Christmas parties talking about World Trade Center 7 or kids' basketball games talking about the Federal Reserve. By reaching out and sharing, you are not really trying to awaken people. You are really looking for help. By reaching out, you are seeking guidance or structure in your own search for truth. You know that there's something wrong. You know that you can't go back to your ignorance. Without clarity, you cannot move forward, and this naturally leads to the next stage of depression. The 4th stage of the awakening is depression. Now that you've reached out to everybody and nothing seems to happen, depression sinks in. You start saying, "It's too big. What could I do about it?" The worst kind of depression that permeates the freedom movement is the arrogant attitude of, "I know it all," or "Screw everybody, I don't care." This is the most painful stage and the hardest one to get out of. Human happiness comes from progress, and yet progress in this journey seems to suck you further into a hole. Unfortunately, there's no way around this, yet it is absolutely necessary that you go through it. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And where it has gone, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Frank Herbert. The 5th and final stage of the awakening is acceptance. This is the point where you now become comfortable with the oncoming reality, and you actually take active and positive steps to prepare for this. This process of making wise choices for yourself and others will yield massive positive personal results. These positive results will reinforce your actions and bring about more positive change in your life. People will start to notice the light in your eyes has returned, as confidence returns. They will now ask you what had happened to you, and those that once did not want to hear the truth will be ready to listen. This is ultimately where we all need to be, both personally and as a movement. I really feel the reason why I've been so successful at waking people up is that I do not try to scare them and depress them. Trust me, I can write doom and gloom with the best of them. Fearmongers do not want you to logically think. They want emotional reaction to their preconceived notions. I do try to motivate, encourage, and enlighten people in order to take the first step into their highest and best self. This journey is the most important one you'll ever take, and it is the only hope to ever becoming what you were meant to be, free and independent. We have already seen most of humanity does not really think, and that most of our lives is controlled by men who do think. In this next awakened paradigm in history, man will need to embrace, "I think, therefore I am free."